Good morning, special needs mamas. I'm back. My screen is a little crooked. I'm not sure what's up with that. I apologize. So, this has been enlightening, I have to say. I love these 20 days of truth. Thank you, Rebecca, for starting this. I absolutely love it. And it has led to quite a few interesting conversations in my group Momentum. And today I wanted to talk to you about this big, giant elephant in the room, the big M word. Now, before I tell you what it is, I'd love for you to guess. Tell me in the comments below what you think I'm talking about. So this word usually causes a lot of anxiety in the special needs world, especially. It is something for me personally that makes my emotions go up and down depending on the day. And it is something we all struggle with, really, but in the special needs world, it tends to cause rants. So I'm hoping this live today will not cause an actual rant. We'll see how it goes. If we haven't met before, by the way, I'm Nicole Ott. I hold many titles. I'm a stress management coach, personal trainer, chief rebel, change instigator. You pick your choice. But ultimately, I help special needs moms out of overwhelm and back to living life on their terms. And I do that because I am a special needs mom, just like you. So I get the struggle, I get the roller coaster ride, and I'm here to help. So today's topic, the word M that I'm referring to, of course, is money. It's already making me anxious just talking about it. Just throwing that out there in all honesty. Of course, I could also be referring to medical coverage. That usually starts a rant in the special needs world as well. Depending on what country you're in, what state you're even in, if you're in the US, that can be different for everybody on what your medical coverage is. And let's be real, it usually sucks. Not everything is covered that our kids need, and it's a struggle. And on that note, I wanted to actually share something with you real quick before I get into the money part, because those two go hand in hand. When I was at my rock bottom a few years ago, I went to see a therapist to try to help me with my anxiety and my depression and really get out of that funk, I guess, I was in, where I was downright low with life and low with myself, and on a good old-fashioned self-pity train. Everything was happening to me and I had no control. So I went to see a therapist, and one of the big concerns, of course, was money and the lack of medical coverage for my son, who's on a ventilator. So there's a lot of monthly bills that come with that, a lot of medical equipment that cost an arm and a leg. And we are one of those families who don't fit one category or another. So in other words, we don't make enough money to pay our bills, but we're not low enough on the income level to qualify for anything. So I went the route of applying for Social Security disability for my son. I went the route of applying for Medicaid for my son, and we live in a lovely state where just because you're dependent on life support doesn't mean anything. There are no waivers for that. So that was a huge, huge stress factor for me, and I had given up my business when Wyatt was born, so that of course compounded the financial responsibility. So that was a huge stress factor. So I went to see a therapist to deal with everything, but money was one of the topics that came up, and the lack of medical coverage and not being able to qualify for any government assistance on that front. So here's what he told me. Take from this what you will. Please comment below because it makes me furious just saying this. And I will tell you off the bat, I never went to that therapist again. And I know a lot of families actually are faced with this situation and are making decisions based on this particular advice that he gave me. But here's what he told me. He said I should get divorced from my husband. Now, we can still live together. We just need to officially get divorced so that we then don't have to count his income. So since I was staying home with Wyatt, that would mean I would have no income. And therefore, through me, I would then qualify for SSI and Medicaid and all that for what? So he was literally sitting in front of me. I'm like frustrated to the T. I can't think straight anymore. I'm done with life in general. And he's sitting there telling me I should just divorce my husband just so we can qualify for government assistance on the medical coverage that we need for our son. If you've been following me for a while, you can pretty much guess the words that came out of my mouth after that to that lovely therapist. And of course, I never went to see him again, but I know this is a really real situation. I know there are a lot of families who deal with this, that have to make decisions based on, do I take this job, which is great income and has great benefits, but then I'm over the income limit to qualify for any other assistance. So then my medical out-of-pocket expenses quadruple. Or do I stay just below the income limit and sacrifice my career and my life in general just so I can get the medical coverage that I need for my kid? And I know a lot of us special needs families deal with this type of scenario, where we have to make these kinds of decisions. Now, everybody makes that on their own terms. Everybody has to deal with it on their own terms and decide what is best for their family and what can they ultimately live with. And we all have to make sacrifices in that area. And I know a lot of families who have switched jobs because of it, or moved to a different state, or moved to a different country even, to make sure they have that kind of coverage for their kid. When that therapist told me that though, holy shit was I pissed off. And excuse my language, like I said, these 20 days of nothing but the truth are gonna be filled with cursing. That's what I do when I get passionate about something. So I apologize ahead of time. I hope you don't take offense. If you do, you're probably actually not following me anyway, so no worries. So when he told me that, that was, as much as it made me mad, it also was a realization for me. It helped me because it made me realize that if that is the only option I have to get the medical coverage that I need for my son, if my only option is to either drop below the poverty level to qualify, so my husband essentially has to give up his well-earned career to do so, or to, on paper, divorce him to qualify for that, then that's not a type of system I want to be a part of in the first place. That's not the type of support I want. Now, does that mean it's going to be a hell of a lot harder for me to cover all my son's medical expenses? Yes, absolutely. But for me, when he said that, and in a sense, I'm kind of thankful for him for saying that. It's not something the therapist should ever say, don't get me wrong. A therapist should never tell you to just get divorced so you can get government assistance for your kid to get medical coverage. So let me set the record straight on that. He should have never said that, and I was pissed off as can be that he would even suggest that. But it also made it very clear to me that if my only option is to essentially depend on the government to take care of my kid and to have to drop below the poverty level to qualify for all these programs, to get all his medical equipment covered, and to get therapy services covered and everything else that comes with it, then I don't want to be a part of it. Does it suck? Absolutely. Is it not fair? Hell yes, it's not fair. I should not have to explain myself and reason with somebody somewhere behind a desk why my kid needs all this stuff. It should be covered, yes, no doubt about it. But for me personally, that was the moment when I decided I don't want any part of it. I had been fighting with them for years. I've been fighting with Social Security Disability, and if you're not in the US watching, by the way, I apologize, this is a different system, so bear with me. I will get to the other money part in a minute. I had been fighting with Social Security Disability for several years. I had been fighting with Medicaid for several years. And I can tell you firsthand, that is a job in and out of itself. You literally have to lay your entire life out in front of them. You have to list all your expenses. You have to explain all your expenses. So every decision you make in your life evolves around money, right? So you have to literally explain every decision you make. You have to have your pay stubs from at least the last 12 months. You have to justify why your kids need all the stuff that they need. Why my quote-unquote normal kids need everything they need, and why my special needs kid needs all these medical things. And I just got so sick and tired of having to constantly justify myself to some random person behind a desk somewhere, and all they know is a case file. They don't even know us. They don't know what's going on here. And I was tired of just waiting for somebody else to decide what I can and cannot do with my life. Does my son depend on all these medical equipment and these supplies? Yes. Do they cost a shitload of money? Hell yes. Just a few days ago, I posted an example of a bill that we just received, and to be perfectly honest, when I received that bill, just after Thanksgiving, I cried. I cried and I had a breakdown that day, and I once again got back on the self-pity train, and I didn't know how we're going to do this. I don't know how we're going to pay this bill. I don't know how we're ever going to get out of this hole, and this realization hit that this bill that I received is always going to be there for my son. His medical needs are not going to change. So when I got that bill, to be perfectly honest, I broke down and cried. Because it's never going to change. He's always going to have these medical needs. And that comes with a lot of bills. But at the same time, what that therapist said to me sticks in my mind. I do not ever want to be in a position where I have to depend on the government telling me what I can and cannot do. Does that maybe make it harder? Maybe you decide. To me, it was harder to always have to answer to them and to keep up with all their paperwork shit, and then having to justify myself only in the end to still get a no from them. So you decide what's harder. For me, that was way more stress than looking at a bill and figuring out how to pay for it. Which brings me to the actual topic, the M word, the money. Okay, so I'm a numbers person. Always have been. It's kind of weird. Most people don't like dealing with numbers and budgets and all that stuff, but I am, much to the delight of my husband. So I always think in numbers, like to the point of if I go somewhere, say we're going to a restaurant, I think of numbers in regards to what does it cost to run this place, business terms. I don't just look at numbers, this is how much a meal costs. I look at how much does it cost to build this place and decorate this place, and how much does it cost to pay all the employees, and what's the overhead. And so yes, I'm weird that way. It's just the way I'm wired. That's how I think. So, but that ultimately also makes me really good with budgeting. That can be a good thing, it can also backfire. So here's my story on the money. I will get to a point, I promise. Hang out till the end. I really will get to a point. I just have to give you a backstory to understand the whole picture. So I was raised to not talk about money. How much somebody makes, how much something costs. I was raised that talking about that was a bad thing. It was just not polite. It was bad manners. It's probably a German cultural thing. I don't know. So in the coaching world, that is referred to as a scarcity mindset, because my parents never talked about it. To this day, I cannot tell you how much money my parents actually make in the jobs that they're in. I have no earthly idea. They won't talk about it. If I ask them, they will tell me enough. That's the answer I get. At the same time, as my sister and I were raised, if we wanted something, the answer usually was no. Just an automatic. We can't afford that, whatever. So in the coaching world, that is referred to as a scarcity mindset. In other words, you always feel like you don't have enough. You don't have enough money, therefore you hang on to whatever you do have, and you think about everything you spend 10 times longer than you probably should. So I'm not big on definitions, so whether you want to call it scarcity mindset or not, doesn't really matter to me. I don't need to throw out fancy words to know what I'm talking about. So that mindset was something that I grew up with, but I never realized how much it affected me until I became a parent myself. So mentality-wise, I'm more one who jumps off the cliffs and figures out how to fly on the way down. That's more my personality. I go out and I do stuff before I have figured out all the how, and maybe that's what's helping me now doing what I do. I don't know. It's a very good possibility. But in regards to the money aspect, I also never really worried about it as much until I became a parent. So as a teenager, and as I came over to the States as an exchange student, and as I moved over here on my own with absolutely no money and two suitcases full, that's all I had when I moved over here to the States in 2001. I didn't worry about money. I just knew that somehow I would figure it out. I mean, I moved over here, I had no place to stay. I crashed with a friend, and all I knew was I wanted to go to college here. I had no earthly idea on how that was even possible, what the process was on making that possible. I just jumped on a plane with 2 suitcases, came over here, and trusted that I would figure it out. And I did, apparently, or I wouldn't be here today. So, once my first 2 kids came along, however, it's like this mindset shift as a parent, and nobody can explain that really to you before you become a parent. It's just your thinking changes. Suddenly you're not just responsible about yourself, but also for other people, so you view everything suddenly differently. You start to second guess yourself, you second guess your decisions, and then of course money comes along with that. So everything that I made and everything that I spent suddenly went to my kids. And there's nothing wrong with that. Let me say that off the bat. And let me also say, by the way, nothing I'm about to say is by any means any sort of financial advice. So take from it what you will. This is just my story, my truth. Make your own decisions based on your family's needs. So when I had my 2 kids, I was married to a, what should I call it? A not so nice person. He was very controlling, he talked down to me, and he also had a scarcity mindset when it came to money. So overall it was a very negative vibe. And yeah, we were paycheck to paycheck. And the day I dodged his fist coming towards my face was the day I packed up my kids and left. And I'm just now realizing I never shared that with my family. So family, I'm sorry. It's not a proud moment in my life that I like to talk about, but here it is. So yeah, I grabbed my 2 kids. My oldest at the time was 3 and my youngest was 1. I grabbed them and moved out. I got an apartment, and then of course the money realization set in. Now I was going for a divorce. I was on my own with 2 kids. I was going to college and having 3 part-time jobs. My kids were in daycare 12 hours a day just so I could make all that work. And I made a whopping $15,000 a year. Yay me. Single mom with 2 kids, $15,000 a year. That's all I made. Thankfully, I had done the legwork beforehand when I started college, so I had grant money and I had scholarships that paid for most of my classes. But I ultimately took out student loans just to pay my living expenses, to pay for that apartment that I then had to have. And we had 2 beds and a table. That was the whole sum of our lovely furniture during that time. But again, I dove into it trusting that I would figure it out along the way. Now, looking back at it, I can't tell you how the hell I survived on $15,000 a year with 2 kids. It was probably all thanks to the student loan that I'm still paying on, by the way. But I wasn't too worried in the sense of I'm not gonna make it. There were definitely weeks where I didn't know how I was gonna pay rent or how I was gonna pay for the clothes that they needed or the food that they needed, so that money mindset started to change to the negative. But I always still trusted that I could figure it out. Fast forward to Wyatt coming along, and I now have a very lovely and supporting husband who adopted those 2 kids, and then we added on 2 more, and he's the absolute best father I could ever ask for. things again got thrown out of loop for me. So here he was with a stable career and a stable income, and he's now telling me I don't have to work so hard. He was willing to take me and my kids in and tell me just finish college and work as you feel fit, not to just survive. So that was something that was never even used to, couldn't wrap my head around. To this day, I don't understand how somebody can be like that. But regardless to say, I'm very thankful for it. But then Wyatt comes along, and it came with a lot more sacrifices than I knew how to deal with. And that's where I think a lot of us special needs parents are. We're in a situation where we know our kids have all these needs that involve a lot of expenses. And that's just the reality of it. We will go above and beyond to make all this happen for them. We will go to all the therapies. We will get them all the equipment that they need. We will get them all the supplies that they need. We will get them the best teachers in schools and therapists and whatnot. But it comes with a huge price tag that, like I said, is mostly not covered by insurance. So as special needs moms, what I see all the time, and I did this myself, and that's why I'm bringing it up, is we dive into whatever it is we need to do, whether that's going through that struggle like I did with trying to figure out if government programs will help, or if it's even a possibility, or whether it's working extra hours, or whether it's like I had to do, actually give up my business to stay home with my son. So the whole dynamic shifts. The little things that you used to worry about before becoming a special needs parent suddenly don't matter anymore at all. All the problems that quote unquote normal people talk about, you laugh off now. And at the same time, you now have this huge responsibility that goes way beyond just parenting, and it comes with the price tag, and it is probably the number one stress factor that I see in all the special needs support groups. There's always a conversation going on about things that are not covered by insurance and the financial burden that involves when you're a special needs parent. And I wanted to lay it out there today and tell you the behind the scenes scoop of where we're at as a family. So even though, yes, I run my own business again, finally, I get to work again, it isn't something that just fixes it at all. So Wyatt is 5, and I'm gonna give you all the numbers now. So I'm not sure if you're ready for this, if you want to take notes, or if this is just too much for you to handle because you don't care what my life looks like. That's fine too. No offense. I'm going to give you all the numbers so that you understand that you're not the only one in that situation. You're not alone with this struggle. And just because I'm in front of the camera and I coach other moms doesn't mean I don't deal with this shit too. So here are the real numbers. Wyatt is 5. We had government assisted medical care for the first year. After that, we were out of the income gap. We're a family of 6. At the time, I think take-home money for my husband was probably around $50,000 a year. This is dollars for all my international friends. So about $50K a year for a family of 6. We almost went into foreclosure once. We were 2 months behind on our house payment because of medical expenses and all the other jazz that comes with special needs parenting. We have plenty of months where we don't know how we are going to pay for the food, where we try to make it last another day or two. We have plenty of months where our kids' shoes are falling apart and we're just pushing it off just a little bit longer. You have a hole in your shoe, oh well, let's wait until the 15th till it's payday. We have, over the course of 5 years, now not all of this is medical expenses, some of it is house repairs that unexpectedly came up that we had to deal with, Over the course of 5 years, we've racked up a credit card debt of $25,000. We have windows that don't open. We have an air conditioning unit on its last leg. Our hot water heater stays hot for about 2 minutes. So that's the real scoop, the behind the scenes. When I say this is a struggle for us just as much as it is for you. But at the same time, like I said in the beginning of this live, I am not willing to be the victim. And as much as it sucks, and damn it, I promised myself I would not cry again. As much as I have my breakdown moments when I see a medical bill come in and I have no idea how the hell I'm going to pay it, I am not a victim of my circumstances, and I will not let myself get down to the level of accepting that I'm going to live below poverty level just so I can get government assistance to help with the medical side of things. I'm not wired that way. I understand that a lot of families have to make that decision, and there's absolutely no judgment coming from me at all. We each have to find what works for our families, but for our family right here, I would gladly take that $25K credit card debt over having to wait for somebody on the government side to decide how my life is going to go. So if that means I have to work my ass off and work from home and find a way to bring in a second income, then so be it. I can't go get a job. Wyatt is in school now, and he's doing fantastic in school, but I always have to be on standby with him. And there's no job in the world that will only let me work between the hours of 9 and 2 and only 180 days a year, because that's how long the school year is. So I don't have that option. My husband has his job. This is where we get our great medical coverage from, and we have great medical coverage, yet we still have this huge amount of debt to deal with. So he needs to do his thing. He's the income provider. He keeps the roof over our heads. He puts the food in the fridge. And I'm just now that Wyatt started school, am able to put myself back out there and try to start a business back up from the ground up. Now, granted, this is not my first rodeo on starting my own business. I've been in the fitness field for over decades. Life coaching is always a part of that. So what I do today is not really that much different from what I used to do. And I already have the foundation of how to get a business up and running. But that said, it's just me. There's no team behind me. I don't have a virtual assistant. I don't have somebody who does the accounting for me. I don't have somebody who does all the graphics for me. I don't have somebody who puts up the website for me. I have to do all of that. So I'm essentially doing the job of a team of people, and I have about 4 hours in a day to do it. The 4 hours that my kids are in school. That's it. That's all I have. At the same time, the lesson that I've learned through running a business before and through my downfall a few years ago was sometimes I have to turn a blind eye to the debt that we have and still invest in myself. And that is a scary thing to do. To start a business back up from absolutely nothing involves spending money. Like the saying goes, you have to spend money to make money, right? And it takes a hell of a lot of time. So there isn't an immediate return of investment. I have no guarantee that the money I spend to get my business up and going again is actually going to come back to me. It might just add on to my pile of debt. I don't know. I have no way of knowing that. So all I can do is show up every day, cross all fingers and toes that what I'm doing is actually helping people and will pay some of my bills. And that's the behind the scenes truth. Half of the time, the decisions that I make in my business are a gamble. I don't know if they're going to pay off. I don't know if the hours of work that I put into this are going to pay off. And I'm also very much aware that all of you special needs moms watching are in the same boat that I am. You have to make the decision that the money that you earn, are you going to spend that on your kids and your kids' medical needs, or are you going to spend that on getting help for yourself? So I realized that I'm essentially fighting an uphill battle. But I love what I do. I don't know what else to do, honestly. I love what I do. I love calling people out on their shit. I tend to be kind of good at that. But I love helping. And if I could do it for free, I would. If I won in the lottery next week and all my debt was paid off, I would do it for free. But I can't. I have bills to pay just like everybody else. I have debt to pay off just like everybody else. And the other side of the coin too is that I had to realize for myself is actually doing this for free is not helping anybody. And I had to learn that the hard way myself. When you do stuff for free, people are not invested in doing the work. And what I do as a coach requires work on the side of my clients. I can show you the way, I can talk you through things, I can make you see things from a different perspective, but in the end, the action part of it has to be done on the side of my client. And as sad as this is, we as human beings are not invested and motivated in something unless we physically invest money in it. So the fact that I'm charging for everything I do doesn't just have to do with the hours that I spend to create all this stuff. And it doesn't just have to do with the fact that I have bills to pay too. It also has to do with the fact that I only work with people who are committed. And commitment, human nature, is that we have to invest to commit to ourselves. And that's just the brutal truth. And I learned that lesson the hard way when I invested in a coach myself. She was a business coach and a mindset coach, so it was partially because of that lovely therapist that I had. Therapy was just not for me. Granted, I found a different therapist later who actually was really good, but therapy wasn't working for me. It was just another way to complain about my life, but it wasn't giving me the action steps to really get out of the misery that I was in. So despite that debt that I had just talked about, that $25,000 credit card debt, thanks to medical bills and house repairs that were unexpected and all that jazz, I spent $5,000 on a coach myself. Did I have the money? Hell no. I swiped my credit card. And it was scary as hell to do that. But at the same time, I knew I had to. It wasn't just about getting my business up and running. I already knew how to do that. It was about the fact that for the last 5 years since Wyatt was born, I had given my all to everybody and everything else. And I had forgotten about what I needed and what I wanted and how to take care of myself. And that involves investing in yourself. Now, it doesn't always have to be money. It doesn't always have to cost anything. It's as simple as investing time in myself through self-care and stress management and getting the help that I need. And for me, hiring that coach was a commitment to myself. It may not work that way for everybody, but for me, it was not about the end result. It wasn't about she would magically show me how to make my business work and make X amount of money. It wasn't about fixing something I was struggling with from my past. It was more about I needed to commit to myself to really... The only way I was going to hold myself accountable and stay motivated to deal with my own shit was to invest in myself, and that came through investing through a mindset coach. That's what I did. I didn't know at the time that my grandma was actually going to jump in and pay half of that back for me. Thank you, Grandma. But it felt right. There's no logical reason that I can give you why I did that. Logically, I would have to tell you I was in so much debt. I should have never invested that kind of money. I should have spent it on medical bills. I should have spent it on my kid. But that's what I'd been doing for 5 years. And all it did was put me in nothing but survival mode. I was surviving. I wasn't living. I was surviving one day to the next. And I was tired of just surviving, just worrying, just dealing with anxiety and depression every single day, and not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Do I now have figured out how to pay off all this debt? No, I'm still in the, oh well, I'll figure it out as I go along. But I needed that commitment. I needed that for me to realize that I'm just as important as anybody else. And that even when the cards are stacked against you, you still have to take care of yourself too. You can't keep going in just survival mode day after day after day. And that was what the commitment to me was all about. And that's really my point of all of this, I guess. It doesn't have to be that you go out and spend a bunch of money, but you have to find a way to commit to yourself. You have to find a way to say, this financial burden is going to be there if you have a medically complex child. And you have to decide essentially which one is the worst evil, I guess. Do you want to be subject to all the rules and regulations of the government and always have to answer to them and make that your full-time job to qualify for everything and get help that way? Then do that. If that is what lowers your stress, then do that. And I know plenty of moms who are actually going up to the local governor and fighting the system and trying to bring about change. That's not my battle. I have no interest whatsoever in trying to fight something that high up. For me, it became a decision of that was actually causing me the most amount of stress, so I'm going to let go of it. It comes with a consequence. And that's the reality of it. It comes with the consequence of, if I let go of that, if I stop fighting that system and trying to somehow get in, then I have to deal with all the shit that comes with it, all the financial responsibility that comes with it. But I would much rather have that. That's actually less stress for me than the alternative. So my point of all this is really you have to decide what works for your family. You have to take an honest look and say, when you go in through those support groups and when you complain about how the system is faulty and it's not fair and all that stuff, is that actually the cause of your stress? If that is the cause of this stress, then again, I'm going to ask you, what are you going to do about it? The system is not magically going to change just because you complain about it. So you can either join the fight and try to change it, if that's your deal, or you can take a step back and say, okay, this is what it is. No matter how much I complain about it, it's not going to change. So what are my alternatives? What can I do to cope with it better, to accept it for what it is, and move on and find an alternative path to deal with all of this? So that's my 2 cents on the money aspect and the medical coverage, and we will chat about this some more in my group Momentum if you want to jump over there. And maybe none of this is helpful to you at all. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below, but I wanted to share my truth on what it looks like on my side of the camera and what our reality is, and it's not pretty and it is scary, and I have days where I just break down and cry and I have no idea how we're gonna get out of this hole. But as you know, if you've been following me, I'm one to just take action. All I can do is literally focus on one problem at a time and move forward. Because the alternative is to stay stuck. And I don't know about you, but I don't like feeling stuck. And I sure as hell don't want to go back to just living in survival mode. I want to actually live. So that's my 2 cents. Take from that whatever you will. And I'll chat to you ladies in my group, Momentum Empowering Special Needs Moms. Bye. Have a good Wednesday.